Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you some of the insights from retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Want to drive more traffic and conversions on your e-commerce site? Brands that use video see 41% more traffic from search engines, and that's just the start. Meet Firework, the leader in AI-powered video commerce. Trusted by brands like L'Oreal and Unilever, Firework turns any page into an immersive, shoppable experience. From pre-recorded long-form content to short-form and everything in between. With Firework, you can easily integrate social media videos into your product pages and run pre-recorded digital showrooms with shoppable content. Plus, Firework offers AI-powered virtual assistants to personalize shopper experience and drive higher conversion. That's why I'm an investor and advisor. Learn more at firework.com. Welcome back to the Retail Pilot. Today's guest is my good friend, Daniella Vitale, a top executive in the luxury retail industry and currently serves as CEO of Salvatore Ferragamo Americas. Prior to Ferragamo, Daniella held leadership roles at Giorgio Armani and Gucci, where she became president and CEO of Gucci America. In 2010, she joined Barneys New York, becoming its first female CEO in 2017, overseeing its digital transformation and navigating financial challenges. Vitale later served as chief brand officer at Tiffany Co. prior to being acquired by LVMH. She is also an active philanthropist serving on UNICEF's New York Advisory Board. Daniella is also on the board of J.H. Baker Retailing Center at the Wharton School. Vitale studied at Lynn College and resides in Manhattan with her husband and twin boys. Daniella, welcome to the Retail Pilot.
Thank you, Ken. I'm glad we were able to do this.
You've been easy to track down. I think I've been following you around the world, restaurants here and there, but finally.
Yes, I miss our breakfast.
I know we have to get back on that schedule. How did you decide that retail was your future?
You know, it probably was my very first job when I was a teenager, which was wrapping gifts during the holidays, where I just loved being at a small store in a town where I grew up in New Jersey. I loved being surrounded by product. It always just excited me. I loved to watch people working on the floor. I loved, interacting with the buyer at the time. And I knew that I wanted to be part of that industry. It wasn't until later that I decided that I really wanted to be part of the luxury industry. So that gave me my first sort of foray into retail.
You had the good fortune of moving on to work with a number of great companies. Take us through what that journey looked like.
I mean, I have worked for, some of the most extraordinary companies in the world. Actually, Ferragamo was my first job. So I have come full circle, 28 years later and coming back as the CEO. And I started as a merchandising assistant in men's shoes. And, from there, I had a fantastic experience. I was here for about 4 years, then went to Giorgio Armani because I knew that I wanted to gain apparel experience. So that gave me an opportunity at the time. It was the 90s and was really when Giorgio Armani was absolutely booming. So also launched accessories and shoes and golf and ski. And so while it was a big company, it was also a very entrepreneurial experience because I got to launch all of these new divisions as well as work with all the licensees. So very, very exciting time. I made, incredible friends there, also very rigorous, very hardworking, very long hours, a lot of weekends, but, some of my greatest friends have come out of that experience. And also being able to interface with the retail division of that company. So I was in wholesale and, became VP of wholesale, but also really interacted with the retail division and the buyers. And, that was also a very exciting moment for me because I had started at Ferragamo in wholesale. So it gave me also a better perspective on retail. And so that was an incredible experience. And then Gucci called. I could not pass up the opportunity to work with Domenico and Tom and Brian Blake and Tom Mendenhall and, a number of great executives. And so I joined, at one of the most pivotal moments of the brand. It was one of the most exciting, opportunities that I've ever had. And there too, I joined and ran wholesale and also covered Latin America, which I had never done before either. I'm not sure why they gave it to me. I didn't speak Portuguese. I didn't speak Spanish, but they gave it to me. So that was also an interesting business to learn, an interesting market. And we converted all of the franchises into directly operated stores and really put wholesale, I would say, on the map. I mean, we expanded our business, twofold, threefold when I was there, and, really developed a footprint in everything from ready to wear to shoes to watches to men's. So really expanded the footprint in terms of the entire Gucci sort of ecosystem. So a really amazing time. When Mark Lee joined in 2006, I became CEO. I knew that I was ready to run the company. Mark Lee gave me the opportunity to do that. And, we had a very successful 4-year run, which, again, I'll always look back on this in a very, very fond way. It was one of the most incredible times of my career. And, again, an incredible time to be at Gucci, and also watching the transformation between several different designers and, those challenges, obviously. And then I took some time off to spend the summer with my twin sons, who I think were 8 at the time. And Mark Lee had gone to Barneys as the CEO, and I decided to join him because, I'd always worked across the aisle with Barneys. So an incredible store, incredible team, incredible opportunity. And, I joined him there. And it was also a very interesting, obviously 10 years did not end the way we wanted it to, but, really taught me about multi-brand retail, which is a very tough business. And, as you can imagine, I mean, all of this, but it was probably also the most challenging experience, but I enjoyed it in so many ways because it was also about doing a lot with very little. I come from brands who really had money to invest, and in multi-brand retail, as you know, it's a little bit harder to do that. So there was a lot of creativity, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and, we really made do with very little and created some of the most exciting experiences. I also helped run the restaurant. So I got, to be in the hospitality business, which was fantastic. And then we all know what happened to Barneys and went to Tiffany to be the chief brand officer. Also an incredible experience, learning jewelry, learning a completely different business, having, a global hat and, traveled all over the world pre-COVID and learning the business and went to the diamond mines and our manufacturing plants and metal factories and, learning a whole different side of the business, which was a lot of fun. And then, we know LVMH acquired it and COVID happened. So it was a short-lived experience, but again, wonderful and tremendous amount of knowledge taken away. Took some more time off. And then here I am at Ferragamo as the CEO of the Americas. I'm also the first female CEO. So I'm really proud to, step into that role, that important role. But it's been, a wonderful experience thus far.
As you were moving up in your retail career, what were you first known for, or what were you being recognized for that was elevating you from one job to another, from one company and one position to another?
I think it's, I'm a product person at the core, and I was a great merchant, and I really understood the, importance of product and what role that played in everything that we did, right? From marketing to digital to, your own DOS to wholesale. And it was really innate for me, right? The product piece is something that I've always enjoyed and wanted to be surrounded by. And, I had a lot of experience in all different types of product as well. So I think that really helped me in terms of, contributing to the building the brand's equity. So that's one. And I was also not afraid, I would say, of the operational part of the business. I, had an office always in our New Jersey warehouses. I understood the distribution part, the finance part, so I really did a lot of the work sometimes that people don't want to do. And so I think that combination of left brain, right brain was always, I think important to my success and to my career. So it, has certainly fueled my growth trajectory and, is an important part of who I am as a leader also.
It's interesting because my career in a similar way, though, certainly at a lower price point, was like yours, very focused on product, but then sort of got into the operational and different areas of the business. In today's world, it's a little bit different. Organizations are a bit more siloed.
Mm-hmm.
For the young merchant, get into the other areas, play in the other sandboxes to get that experience they may need to ultimately run a business one day.
Completely agree. And I knew I had to learn that part of the business in order to become a CEO. I don't see how you couldn't have that competency and become a CEO. So I agree with you. And my advice to young people would be, take an opportunity, take a chance. It may not be the sexiest thing in the world, but these are things you're going to have to learn. And that'll make you more successful, medium to long term. And a candidate also for running either divisions or a company one day. I completely agree with you. And I think sometimes people don't want to take that step because it doesn't seem as exciting, but it's necessary, particularly in this environment. I think it's necessary.
It's interesting, when I went through the Macy's training program and worked at Macy's for the first 5 years of my retail career, you would go from buying line to store line, back to buying line to store line. And you developed a preference for one or the other. The buyers seemed to get the limelight because they did all the good travel. Guys in the stores went nowhere, but it really gave you an appreciation for the entire ecosystem and an understanding of the customer journey. And I think a lot of that's really missing today as people are very focused on one specific area of the business or another and don't have that perspective of what really goes into running a great business. I know one thing about you that you were very focused on as you moved up in your career was really being a digital change agent, bringing technology to companies. And luxury has been one of the most challenging areas, or maybe the most standoffish when it comes to accepting technology. Talk a little bit more about how you've helped these companies, legacy companies, evolve and embrace the digital world.
Because we really need to be sort of, I think, channel agnostic. And I always, feel that showing brands that consistency between digital and the physical stores can be the same experience. And you can have a very, enriching experience online as you would in the physical stores. And so really being able to tell that story and tell that, narrative online and convincing brands, because I launched also digital at Gucci and then Barneys, is, that can be very, again, rewarding and, really great for the customer. And, showing brands that that's a possibility, I think was key. And also just how, the consumer shops. I mean, we know that 70% of purchases, you know this better than I do, are fueled by, our devices and are fueled by things that they have found online. And so not having that as a way to shop, I think is a huge mistake. And I think is very frustrating for consumers, quite frankly. And again, what better way to tell your brand story by using digital and talk about customer acquisition? That's where people usually find the brand story. And so, that's going to be a big part of how we acquire customers. And without that, I don't think you acquire a younger, newer customer. And that was something also that we've been really focused on here. And now it's our largest, business. And, we were a little bit traditional in terms of our approach to, we have a big, robust store network, but, a strong one. But our digital expertise was not as strong. And I think the narrative that we were telling online was also not as strong and wasn't playful enough, wasn't, I think positioning ourselves again to appeal to a new consumer. It doesn't even have to be a young consumer. It's just a new consumer, particularly as we're developing the women's business, which we know, women use their devices and their phones to research everything, their tablets, whatever it is. So, being able to now have this, again, enriching experience, I think has really helped us as a brand. And that's, again, something that I tried to stand up in every company that I've worked with. And even Barneys was shocking to me. It was like $10 million when I got there. About, became a $250 million business, but no one believed that we could sell luxury products online.
Do you think?
But it was the storytelling part that was very important to the growth because, we were competing. That was really, Net-a-Porter and all these things, really exploding. So we were competing against technology companies. We were not a technology company. We were competing against them. So how could we differentiate ourselves? And that was really the storytelling part and the narrative part, and telling the, story of not just Barneys, but all these incredible designers and brands we had under our roof.
I remember, I think we actually met while you were at Barney's, and we met over the technology space.
Yes.
And you were clearly trying to catch up with what was happening around, as you mentioned, Net-a-Porter and other online shopping alternatives that she had to buy product. And as you said, I think Barney's just got there too late. I think so much had happened and it was just a little bit too late. But it was a big business, a $250 million business. It's amazing that it's just gone.
I know.
Barney's is gone, online is gone, and oh my God, Fred's is gone. I mean, that is... you go for lunch up here.
I know. It still breaks my heart, but I think, in the end, had we maybe invested a little more in digital, I think things would have turned out differently. But again, that I had to put past me, and hopefully someday someone resurrects it in a proper way.
So pivoting over to Ferragamo, obviously you are a big believer in digital and just hearing how well it's performing. Are you driving that for the company? I mean, I know your responsibility as CEO of the Americas, but as you work with the leadership team, do they look to you to really take them into the digital age?
They do, because we're the biggest business and we're the most successful, digital business in our company. So they have to, really work very closely with us in terms of strategy, product development of the site, user experience, marketing. I mean, they control, obviously from an IT perspective and technology development perspective, they control that, and that's all there. Also, from a marketing standpoint, we work very, very closely with the team in terms of how to spend our money. And, but they look to us, for a lot of direction because, again, it's the biggest business in the company. You have to. And so, I think with the expertise that we have, and we really put it under an omni-channel sort of umbrella now. So really having the retail, the physical store teams and the digital teams now have merged. It has been an incredible thing to watch, and how they really play off of each other, and how it's become that customer journey has become very consistent. And again, that omni-channel customer is one of our most valuable customers. They spend more, their retention is better, all of it. So if we can just convert a few thousand of those, it would be very accretive for us as a company. So, and that omni-channel piece, I think, is more prevalent, I would say, in the US than it is some of the other regions. Maybe, China it is, but definitely that strategy for us is working. And how the physical stores use, technology to convert and to show, the consumer what that brand narrative is. We have an app that we use in the stores. They have access, obviously, to our site and can show them all of the things that we are doing by way of storytelling. So it's been very, very good.
Setting some context for listeners, and Ferragamo is a public company, but just size of the company and how big or what percent of the total sales is being done online now?
So, we are, this is all public information. We're over $1 billion. And I would say our region, again, is the biggest. So, we're in the 15 to 18%. I think the other regions fall slightly below that, but, it's growing. The penetration is growing. And, what that right size is, I'm not sure. Certainly it can be bigger, and we know that it can be bigger, but, and so we have more to go, but I don't know what that right penetration is.
With the focus on digital, where does the digital team sit? Do you have a group, and does another group sit in Florence?
Yes, in Florence. So I have a dedicated head, again, sits more under an omni-channel umbrella. I have a merchandiser. I have, 2 people in analytics. I have, people in marketing. So we have a pretty, small but mighty, very mighty team that's dedicated to the digital business. We have a digital division in LATAM, and, we're still working on our strategy in Canada and how do we really stand that up a little bit better. So, and then we have a team in Italy that we work very, very closely with on performance marketing, obviously, again, on the technology side, on site enhancements. That's all really done in Italy. It's a fantastic partnership. And we always have a seat at the table, which I admire. I admire that because that's not always the case. And we really have a seat at the table.
I would assume that one of the challenges at leading a country or a region in the world is getting that seat at the table. And clearly it sounds like you have that seat. And now I guess there's a little bit of a vacuum since your CEO stepped down a few months back. I assume it's more like you have a room in the inn versus just a seat at the table. How are you helping to influence other areas? Obviously, you play a strong role. You have a strong point of view when it comes to product. Maximilian Davis joined a little while back. How are you impacting what the customer is now seeing?
I mean, it's a very collaborative company, I have to say. And I experienced that in my first tenure at the company, and I'm experiencing that now. It's very collaborative. You know, we collaborate with all of the different divisions. We are the largest region. And, you know, we do have, I mean, obviously influence over all of the markets, I would say, from a marketing standpoint, from an influencer standpoint, celebrity, right? Everybody's looking to us. So, you know, there is a lot of really good relationships, a lot of really good collaborations. I would say this is one of the healthiest structures that I've worked in terms of regional versus HQ. And that's really important. And I think that's going to be very important to our success as a company because there are regional needs, right? That we're all different. I mean, yes, we're a global company. Yes, we want consistency, but we all know that there are regional specifics, regional needs, product needs, marketing needs. Even within the country, there's different needs between New York and LA and Dallas and Bell Harbor. So, you know, we have to make that curated as much as possible because that consumer is demanding it. That consumer wants to know that we know her or we know him, you know, and they want to see the product and be communicated in a way that is personal to them. So we have to be, you know, very credible in that space, I would say, in terms of how we communicate. And you can't really do that unless you're sometimes doing, it doesn't all have to be, because there are tentpole things and there are brand and upper funnel things that obviously is going to help the equity of the company. But then there are, you know, lower funnel things that, you know, really need to happen at a regional level, I would say, and true for Mexico and true for Brazil.
When you think about reaching the customer and marketing and spending, what are some of the big marketing vehicles that you use? And then what are some of the more exclusive ways you reach some of your best customers?
So I would say, you know, we're investing much more heavily in digital, no surprise, but in different verticals, you know, so we're definitely operating more with, you know, video, using sort of AI to support us on digital creative. We are, you know, investing more in, you know, I would say social media than we were before. And again, that's also the need as we grow the women's business, right? You absolutely have to be in these different verticals. But I think one of the unique things that we do and one of the unique things we can offer is we're also in the lifestyle business. The family is in the hotel business, is in the restaurant business, is in the vineyard business. And so really creating and curating experiences like that around these other areas of the company. Again, it's not under our umbrella, it's separate. But we need to utilize that because ultimately we know the consumer wants experiences. I always joke that we're in the entertainment business. I mean, they want to be entertained. It's not just about product anymore. They want to feel this authentic experience and those extensions of the brand, like the wine at Il Boro and the hotels in Florence and the beautiful Portrait Hotel in Milan. You know, we just brought a group of, you know, some of our best customers to the Milan show and took them to Il Boro. We have this incredible museum. We have archives, you know, our archival studio is something I've never seen in my entire career. I mean, it's absolutely pristine and preserved and so well done. You know, people love that. And so, you know, taking them to all of those things and experiencing Milan, you know, and knowing that this is all very personal, it's been one of the best experiences that we've been able to provide. And we've heard that feedback and we bring a different group every single time. But those customers are, you know, really special to us and they feel that from us. They feel that, you know, very authentic sort of relationship with the company and with the Ferragamos. And not many brands can say that, right? Not many brands can do that where it really feels like it's part of the company. It is part of the company.
It's interesting. A brand to me is a lot like a club. And do I want to be a member of that club or not a member of the club? And the way you describe the Ferragamo Club, I think I need to be a member. I need a membership at the Ferragamo Club because I want to participate in that.
Maybe that's our next step. We're coming for you, Casa Cipriani. Maybe that's our next
I
step.
love that. I love it. So all that being said, and it sounds positive and had a chance to hop online and look at product, business continues to be a bit challenging. There are headwinds facing not only Ferragamo, but luxury. China has been very difficult. Now we're dealing with tariffs. What are some of the near-term challenges that you're actually facing, and how are you focused on overcoming them?
Look, we had a very strong Q4. We had, despite the wholesale headwinds, we had actually a good year in terms of our retail environment. And, the first quarter is performing well. And, we have to stay, super diligent. And it is going to be a very challenging, you said it, it's going to be a very challenging macro environment. It's affecting all countries, all regions. And, how we really navigate that is by, staying super vigilant in terms of our product development, really focusing on our women's business. I think we're going to take a lot of market share away. Our handbag business is absolutely explosive right now. The Hug bag has been a big hit. And so we have to stay hyper-focused on that and hyper-focused on not only acquiring new customers, but also the retention piece. And how do we continue? Our database is the biggest asset we have. And so how do we continue, retaining those customers or regaining them? And so that has to be, because we know there's going to be challenges with traffic. We know there's going to be challenges with tourism. We know all of these things, are going to affect us, and tariffs and everything else. And hopefully the tariffs won't affect our pricing. But, we have to be super vigilant about, going after that existing consumer and making sure they stay with us, and then taking market share from our competitors by acquiring, new ones. And I think the experience piece, we have an entire division that's dedicated to training and dedicated to, weathering these type of macro, issues. And, how do we convert better? How do we do better in terms of when people do walk in the store, making sure that experience is absolutely special, because they're crossing that threshold because they want to see you and because they want to be in the physical store. So how do we make that an incredibly special experience and allow people to forget for a minute, maybe what's going on in the rest of the world? So that's, I think we've navigated it well thus far, and we'll continue to navigate it, I think, in a positive way.
When you and I had breakfast, might have been a couple of years ago, just after you had started at Ferragamo, I think you told me, if I remember correctly, that Ferragamo was really famous for the men's belt.
Men's belts and shoes.
The men's belt and shoes was doing a disproportionate amount of the business. And now I see the business, and I hear you talking about it shifting and being more focused on the women's bag. Tell us about your role in helping drive that, because obviously I think women's bags are a much better business and has a bit more longevity than men's shoes, only because living with one, you guys tend to replace your bags more than we replace our shoes. So was this something that you identified early as an opportunity? How has the company moved from a men's belt and shoe business to now being known for iconic women's handbags?
Well, we've always been experts in the leather goods business, right? That's, our core competency has always been, leather goods, whether it's men's leather goods, women's leather goods, belts, that is our core competency. So, really, and again, just to be clear, the men's is still very important to us and continues to grow. But we know in order to scale this business, to your point about your wife, is that, women tend to spend more and tend to spend, more frequently and, don't look at necessarily need. It's about a dream, and it's about, wanting something fantastic that makes you feel good and wanting something to carry when you're on vacation or going out. So, creating that excitement in the women's categories has been a big focus for us. And Maximilian designed, the Hug bag, which has been a huge hit and remain in the collection for many years to come. So this has a lot of runway also, which is exciting. And I think it was always there. It was just a matter of really crystallizing the strategy and crystallizing, how we use also our iconography in women's handbags that was also established, quite frankly, in shoes, like the piece of Ganchini hardware that we're known for. That's on the Hug bag. They did a brilliant, brilliant job of incorporating that in a feminine way and in a way that feels, very luxurious, but also we have a very strong price value relationship, and everything is made in Italy. Everything is made in Italy within our company, which I also think is one of our advantages. And I think also the price value, I didn't mention that on when you said, how do we navigate this? I think offering, again, a strong price value in the women's leather goods and women's shoes and other categories also is compelling to that consumer, because I think that consumer is definitely balking at some of the price increases. We see it. And so we've been very careful about where we position ourselves and ensuring that, we're positioning ourselves in a compelling way. And so the price points are certainly high in handbags, but I think, again, the price value and that intrinsic value is there. And that will be an important piece to navigate, some of these headwinds.
Yeah, it's interesting. You take a look at Ralph Lauren's business and it's continued to grow and actually thrive. Worked there for a few years, as you know. They were also always chasing that women's business, right? Ralph was known as he was the North Star of men's. Mm-hmm. And Rivers was elusive. And, whether it was the Kelly bag, whatever he was chasing, it just wasn't there. I assume now it's probably getting there because that's really where the business is.
I think you're right.
How much of the Ferragamo business is women's?
I can't really give you that number, but I would say that we're evenly split now, whereas women's, though, is growing obviously faster.
That's great.
And that handbag piece has been just, very, very strong, very strong. Small leather goods, all of those categories have been very strong. And again, I really credit Max and the merchandising team of creating, something that is going to be very, very iconic, but also extremely desirable to a younger consumer as well. So I think, that bag and our whole leather assortment, I would say, is catering to our existing consumer as well as a new consumer. So creating that kind of halo effect for the brand, I think, has really helped us. Our customer acquisition numbers were up last year, high single digits, and that came largely because of leather goods.
What would you say, Daniella, has been your greatest challenge the time you've been at Ferragamo?
Well, I think, look, some of our results were disappointing. We obviously, again, we're a public company, so all public information. And, we worked really, really hard and, had a fantastic strategy. We created an amazing base. But, again, the macro picture changed quite quickly. And so, unfortunately, I think that has been my biggest challenge is, how do we continue with the strategy, continue the growth with these constant headwinds? I mean, first it's, the whole luxury business kind of contracted. People were spending money on experiences and hotels and trips and everything. And now we have some other headwinds that, we're all sort of aware of. And, that's been my biggest challenge. And also keeping the team really motivated and keeping morale up and making sure culturally, we're sound and we're really pulling for each other. We know what our goals are. We're very clear about our key sort of strategy and pillars and keeping everyone excited about that and not losing. And I feel like we've not lost that enthusiasm, but it is a challenge to sometimes, obviously everything you've dedicated your time to and everything we've done that sometimes that did not yield the results that we had expected. So that's sort of, I would say, my biggest challenge here has been, we had a record year in 2022. So, you have a record year and then you have to give it back sometimes.
What career advice would you give to someone that's considering entering not only the retail business, but the fashion space in retail?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit before. I think sometimes when I talk to people and I run a mentor circle within the company for young women. I should say all women. It's not just young women, but a lot of people that are starting their careers think their first job is going to be their last job. They think their first job is where they will spend their whole lives and develop their career. And that's just not true. And so, take chances, take a risk, get into a great company. You may not love the area that you're in. It may not be the exact discipline that you want to do, but take a chance in getting into a great organization with potentially great mentors and take a risk. And, again, you can always decide later on if it's not right for you, you go on to something else. But I think that, trying to find that perfect opportunity as you start out is just not feasible. And when I came to Ferragamo, I mean, if you had asked me at whatever I was, 22, that I wanted to do men's shoes, probably not. But I saw the opportunity and I loved it and I thrived and I got to work with factories and, it was an incredible experience, but I never would have expected that. And so if I had not taken that chance, all those years ago, would I be sitting here today? Probably not. And so I do think people, the younger generation and anyone that's looking to get into the business, it could be into someone who wants to change career paths. I think, you need to take a chance. And I think finding yourself as part of a really good organization. And I always believed in, what I was doing. So I also never entered a job and said, oh, I'm only going to do this for a couple of years. So really try to believe, give it your best. And again, longer term, medium, long term, it may not be the right thing for you, but it will help you open doors for sure.
I will definitely replay this portion of the podcast for my daughter, who thinks she has all the answers in the world when it comes to scoping a job. Great advice.
No, I try to tell my children the same thing. I mean, they're graduating this year, and I think it's really important that they may need to take a few risks.
Pitch our listeners on why explore Ferragamo for a job. What do you have to offer?
I mean, I think it's a fantastic environment. I think we have built an organization that is really focused on their people and really focused on empathy, empathetic leadership. We have really sort of, decimated all the silos. I would say it's never been more cohesive. Really, everyone looks out for one another. Everyone has a very, very collaborative spirit. We're very conscientious about, and these are not just words, we're very conscientious about the work-life balance. And again, it's about creating work-life balance for everyone. If you want to go home and read a book, you need time to go home and read that book. It's not just about going home to take care of children or a dog. It's about creating real time for you to enjoy what you love. So trying to create that balance for everyone. We also just extended our paternity leave. We want to make sure that we're creating an environment where people can thrive. It's hard work. It requires a tremendous amount of commitment and diligence and focus and all of that. But we want to make sure that the environment is a place where you can really thrive. And I think, we've stood up wonderful ERG programs. Again, we have our mentor circle. We have fireside chats with the senior executives. And so, I think all of those things has made us a better company for it. And so I think any young person looking for a job would want to be part of that experience. I also spend time with the interns. I spend time with the interns when they first come to the company, and then I spend time with them when they're leaving. So, that's been a lot of the feedback also from the interns when they enter the program, that it is a very inclusive environment. And I think that's, again, a lot of companies talk about it, but they actually do it, and we actually do it.
So I would say this on top of that, as I've gotten to know you over the years and see you as a person, as a parent, as a leader, I would be excited to come and work for you, as I think anybody who's looking for a career, especially one in the luxury space, they should consider Ferragamo, because Daniella Vitale, you are the real deal. All right.
Thank you.
You are very welcome.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
You're the best. I want to pivot to a rapid fire.
I'm ready.
All right. Besides Ferragamo, favorite designer brand?
I may get in trouble for this. Kate, love what she's doing. Love what she's doing. I've watched her for a long time. She was part of Barneys, back when I was part of the company. And I think she's doing a really incredible job amongst the giants in the luxury space.
Kate's great. And then the row is also just like, if you think about that club who's winning right now, there you go.
And the row is amazing brand. And we did incredibly well with it at Barneys. And the girls are very, very talented and, really have done a terrific job.
I think I know the answer to this one. If you couldn't live in New York or in what city?
Might be living next to each other. I mean, certainly Italy. I'm a complete Italophile and, would not live anywhere else. If I had to leave New York, probably between Milan or Rome. I'm still a city woman and, so probably between either of those two cities, and then you can travel from there. But I love everything about Italy.
Favorite streamed show?
I think Saint Laurent. I have always been a fan. I think he does an incredible job in terms of his shows, in terms of the venues, in terms of just the backdrop and everything. And I was there attending them, in the past, and now I watch them certainly online, but it's still one of my favorites.
Okay. Now, favorite stream show on like Netflix.
Oh, stream show. I thought you meant runway.
Oh, that's okay. Now that's one.
Now you know I'm also a Saint Laurent fan. I'm sorry. I thought you meant live streaming a show because I have to watch the shows now online. I only get to go to one. I am, of course, am watching The White Lotus right now, which I guess probably everyone is. And I would say Succession has been incredible. I think it's so well done. And I also like Shogun as well. It took us a while to get through it, but I really enjoyed it.
It won a few awards, didn't it?
Yes, just a few.
Who would you most like to meet?
That's easy. For me, it would be Michelle Obama. I've never met her. I've been fortunate to be in the same room as Barack Obama. I wouldn't say I met him, but I would love to meet Michelle. I've read her books. I've, watched her post politics. I've watched her, really, she's an incredibly impressive person, woman, mother, wife. I would really love to meet her one day.
Maybe she'll be number 48.
Maybe. I don't think she wants that, but you never know.
And let's just hope number 47 doesn't have something with Italy where he imposes tariffs on all imports from Italy, just like he's doing on the spirits coming in from France.
I agree. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm not sure where you make champagne in this country, but go ahead. But I hope that's not going to be the case with our products, but fingers crossed.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the retail pilot, Daniella Vitale. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate it and appreciate your friendship.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the retail pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.